Good day to you. To share or not to share? What a question. I mean, what a loving term that is, share, right? We share love with another person, don't we? We share things that we have in our house with people that need those things. Somebody needs a sweatshirt and you have one and they don't have one. Sure, you give it to them. We share all kinds of things in life, and certainly we share things online. But is that really sharing? And is that form of sharing a commodification that we aren't aware of? That's what this chapter is all about, right? It's all about sharing. And it talks about sharing as a model of communicating that has a political economy to it. That's the essence of the chapter. It uses two particular businesses to try and illustrate the sharing economy that goes online. We've got Airbnb and we've got Uber that are talked about, but really this chapter addresses the larger issue of sharing as a form of commodification. So let's get into it. So, talking first about human beings and what their desires are in life, one of the desires is to engage in transportation and tourism. Human beings like to move around. We have the automobile for that. We based a lot of our economy strictly on the automobile. We don't even really have train travel anymore because the car lobby decided to convince the government to shut down trains. So we love our vehicles. We consider them to be one of the most important things that we'll own, and we can't wait to own them. When we get to be 16, 17, 18, we're trying to get a car. So we do a lot of traveling around, but also we do a lot of touring. Not necessarily Caribbean touring, not necessarily going to Europe, although that's part of tourism. It's also the idea that we like to get out of town. We like to go to the beach. We like to take a road trip. We like to go see sports in big cities. So travel and tourism are two very big values that most Americans and in fact most people in the world have. Sharing comes into that because we want to affect these two things, travel and tourism, with others. We want to share those experiences with others. But sharing is a positively connoted term, as the book points out. It is a term that has a bias to it, in other words. When we say sharing, we think of it positively. And certainly social media want us to think of sharing that way. They want it to be a positive experience. But is it really? Let's examine some of the facts, taking on Uber, first of all, and another takedown of a company using a political economy perspective. So Uber ushered in the pay-per-service sharing model. That's a model for money making, a model for profit making, pay-per-service sharing model. Most of you have taken an Uber or a Lyft, the competitor. I have both of the apps on my phone, and I'm hopping in cars all the time when I go to conferences to present that, and I'm jumping in the back seat and somebody else is back there too, and we are sharing a ride together, but we are also engaging in commerce. We're engaging in commerce because we are paying per service, and at the same time we are sharing that service. We're sharing the car, in fact, with the person who owns that car. Uber promises a lot of individualistic benefits when you are considering whether you want to take an Uber ride. It's for your convenience, right? That's for your convenience. So you go out and you get in the car and it takes you to the grocery store and you don't have to go start your car. You don't have to pay insurance on your own car. You don't have to make sure there's gas in your own car. It's much more convenient for somebody to pull up and you to get in that car. So there's a convenience there, but that's your convenience. It's an individualistic convenience. It's not necessarily the convenience of the driver to be working those hours. It's not the convenience necessarily of the pedestrian walking across the street who has to wait for your car to pass before they can cross. It's an individualistic convenience that's part of this pay-per-service sharing model. Also, there are claims made by Uber, the author contends, that are unfair, such as that Uber reduces drunk driving. The author says this is really a ridiculous assumption. Fuchs says that drunk driving is about getting a person not to drink and not getting in a car. It's not about offering an alternative that enables the drinking. In this model, the pay-per-service model, the commodity is the service. Yeah, that's what the service is. It's jumping on your social media platform, ordering an Uber, ordering an Airbnb, which we'll talk about in a minute, ordering a Lyft, and that is the commodity. And yet the worker and the capitalist in this case, in this kind of model, is one and the same person, bringing us back to some of the imagery that we connoted when we talked about the prosumer. In a sharing pay-per-service economy, The worker is both the person who is working for a living and is also the person who is accumulating capital. That's what an Uber driver does. Some of you in this class may be Uber drivers. So you're getting in your car, you're working, and you're collecting those fares, and you're hoping for tips because you want to accumulate capital. According to Karl Marx, the only true owner of all of the capital is a person who is a freelancer. That's a person who works for themselves, essentially, but they sign out their services. And that's what Uber drivers do. That's what Lyft drivers do. That's what Airbnb owners do. Whereas a person who works for a company, you work for IBM, you work for Geico, you work for Verizon, you do not own all of the capital. You are selling your labor and you are accumulating capital, but you do not own the means of the production. You don't own the machine that makes the IBM part, whereas an Uber driver owns the car. Now we're going to turn to some contradictions here to help continue to criticize Uber and the sharing economy model. And the first contradiction is that taxi driver wages have been dumped by the sharing economy. It's very difficult to become a taxi driver. I don't know if you know this, but in New York City, you've got to have a license to drive a taxi. And those licenses used to be very expensive because the competition was so stiff. Not anymore. Taxi drivers their wages have declined rapidly. And as a viable job, it's not anywhere near as viable as it once was. Also, what happens in this sharing economy is the person who is accumulating capital is essentially monetizing their discomfort. I thought that was an interesting phrase, monetizing your discomfort. I mean, who wants to have a stranger get into your car? Who wants to put miles on your car that you're not really benefiting from by driving to the mountains or going skiing? This is a kind of exploitation that you can say that goes on in that you're exploiting yourself. You're monetizing your own discomfort in order to accumulate capital. Also, the wages of an Uber driver are not as great as you would think. The book claims are about $19 an hour, which is really good for an entry-level position. But when you're sacrificing the longevity of your vehicle and you're having people invade a personal private space, is 19 a reasonable salary. All right, the author also talks about a second model of the sharing economy, which he calls the freemium model. I'm not sure if this term ever caught on. It is an interesting concept. It's the idea that people sign up for online stuff because the first time is going to be free, just like it is on Uber, just like it is on Lyft. You get a free first ride. But after that, you have the app, you have the social media platform, you're sucked in. You've signed up. You're going to get maybe further reductions in coupons, but you're going to be paying after that. That's the freemium economy. Another criticism that the author offers of the sharing economy is that if you look economically at the wage share and the profit share, this is the total percentage of wages that an Uber driver has in compared to the entire economy, and the total percent of profits that a worker is making compared to the entire economy. It's a wage share and a profit share, both of which have declined for Uber drivers. They are making less of the total wages in the entire economy and less of the total profits than they were when the company started. But at the same time, the capital share of the company has gone up. It used to be a non-money maker, and now it's a very profitable company. Airbnb has similar properties. You can read about it on your own. This is not a course on Airbnb, but it's also a similar kind of proposition there that people, instead of offering their cars, are offering their homes for you to stay. I've stayed in a few Airbnb places myself, and you get your little lockbox key and you go stay there, and you never see the landlord. You don't pay a deposit. They have your credit card that they could charge if you break something, but there's a complete disconnect between you and the person that you're renting from, which is somewhat different from an Uber driver. So here we're going to introduce the concept of commodity fetishism again. That's the Marx term that we talked about earlier. And remember, one of the key planks to the definition of commodity fetishism is where we take something that is otherwise not normal and we present it as normal, usually within a capitalist ideological framework. So, for example, we present social relations through the platforms of sharing as being normal. All the friends that you befriend on your social media platforms, that is being depicted ideologically as normal. It's not normal to reach out to people who you are seeking to have a social media connection with because you think they're going to advance your career. That's not necessarily a normal human relation. It's not normal to invite somebody into your vehicle. It's not normally to delete friends. That's not a normal thing, delete a friend. But this is all presented as normal so that we don't even think twice about it. It's a commodity fetishism. And in a commodity fetishism economy, social relations, the relations that we have with people, are just mere instruments for capital accumulation. I went to get a drink last night and have some dinner at a local bar down the road, and I know right away as soon as I sit down that if I want the full attention of that bartender, I've got to indicate that I'm going to be giving a tip, and that tip cannot be 10%. It probably can't be 15% unless I'm going to get just average service. It has to be 20%. My social relation with that person is entirely dependent upon it, or mostly dependent on the tip. So social relations become subservient to capital accumulation. How many people are you approached by on a daily basis who seem really friendly, and then you find out that they're trying to sell you something, especially all those robo phone calls we receive. So in other words, commodity producers, in this kind of commodity fetishism critique, commodity producers, they don't really relate to each other. They're not relating to each other on the basis of humanity. They're relating on the basis of capital accumulation. And money is used as a means for organizing trust. Isn't that interesting? You would never let a stranger get into your car, but as an Uber driver, they're paying for it. So by virtue of them paying the exchange of capital, we have gained their trust and they have gained ours. All right, let's further highlight what the sharing economy is all about. The noted author and historian Jeff Jarvis claims that the more we share, the more we benefit from others' sharings. That's the modus operandi of why we go online. We're going to share because we're going to benefit from what others are going to do in responding to our sharing. They're going to give us some feedback. They're going to validate us. They're going to exchange something that makes us look like we're doing something that's normal together. You share your camping photo. I'll share my camping photo. Camping's normal. That's what goes on in a sharing economy, according to Jeff Jarvis. However, sharing really, if you look at it from a political economy standpoint, sharing really only serves the purpose of serving ads to users, serving ads like a waiter or a waitress. Here, I'm going to serve you this McDonald's ad. I'm going to serve you the Chick-fil-A ad. Serving ads to others and then commodifying the data that results. That's what sharing is really all about. Botsman and Rogers, two theorists, they claim that collaborative consumption is essentially peer-to-peer exchanges between people that are simultaneously consumers, borrowers, and neighbors. We're all wrapped up into one, and these identities all become blended together. The problem with this is that when we talk about a sharing economy, in terms of what it does for us, it allows us to share those feel-good, positively connoted feelings that come out. We are totally ignoring the class differences that exist amongst people who are able to share and people who are not, people who do not have the financial resources, people who do not have families and maybe don't have the kinds of social relations that they would like to share that they would like to share. This is a problem. And also there's a sharing fetishism which ignores the difference between commercialism and non-commercialism. In fact, it tries to take non-commercialism and make it commercial. Even in the United States, if you look at public media, which should be completely free from commercialization, the funding for them is so low from the government that they actually have to use sponsorships to get underwriting monies from really big companies like Monsanto, the genetic grain producer. And so it's an example in broadcasting that also occurs in social media of the blurring of the line between what should be a public good and using what should be public good for the commodification of data. There is an alternative sharing economy as proposed by Charles Leadbeater. This is an economy that would involve free software like Linus. Linus, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a free operating software for computers. It's a platform for computers to communicate. It's free. It's open to the public. Also, the alternative sharing economy involves social networks. That's part of it. Blogs And any wikis is a term used very much for prosuming, because the content that's produced on WikiLeaks or anything that's wiki is produced by the consumer. But in the alternative sharing economy, what is ignored, the author returns us to time and time again, is that capitalism also involves necessarily imperialism. And that means spreading the capital accumulation to other areas to seek more capital. So Facebook, as an example, we talked about how that big fine came down, $5 billion. Facebook just shrugged it off because they had record earnings in the fourth quarter. And the power and reach of Facebook it's incredible. We've been studying it all along in this class. And is it stopping? Did the fine stop Facebook? No. It's an imperial company. It's seeking always to capitalize on that user data, and only when it gets caught is it going to backpedal temporarily. The author contends that there are three political economies in information sharing, three different types of economies. You've got your private economy, those are money makers. You've got your public economy, that's government. You want to pay your taxes? You can go online to the IRS and you can download the form, and there's no cost, right? But there will be some sponsored links on the internet that try to get you to buy the IRS tax form from some business when you don't have to. The business is not going to tell you, oh, we want you to know that you don't have to buy this. No, the business wants you to think this is the legitimate and the only legitimate IRS form, and you have to buy it from them. So we have private business, we have public businesses, and then the third business that we have is a common political economy. And this is where we are meeting as prosumers in the social media world, and together as people who are not companies but as individual citizens. We are in a sharing economy. And so I'm going to wrap things up with a quote on page 13 that brings it all home, the sharing economy. And it goes like this: the sharing economy is an expression of how capitalist development socializes the forces of production that within class relations foster new forms of exploitation of the commons and the public, but have the potential to become the foundation of a democratic commons-based economy and society. Once again, we are left with an idealism that the author says has not been reached. Have a great day.